One is to propagate the DNSSEC signings throughout the top-level domains of the internet. So as of today, there's a number 9 that I believe have been signed with the new DNSSEC root key. That's 9 out of roughly 270. So there's another 261 to go. So the namespace has to be secured in that fashion. Then there has to be the development of the applications to leverage this, whether it's the browsers or it's the email systems or any of the other systems that are leveraging the domain name system need to be evolved. And then, of course, as well, the ISPs need to adopt and support the name server capabilities in supporting DNSSEC. So now we move into a new phase which really relates to adoption, and I think it's very relevant then that I now hand it over to Dan Kaminsky, who's been working in this area, and then we'll cap off with Mark Weatherford, who has been very involved in deploying DNSSEC in the state of California.
So I'd like to begin by actually joining Rod in his congratulations of the IETF. There are a tremendous number of engineers who have literally put maybe up to even decades of their life into the project of DNSSEC. I was not one of them. I was, in fact, like many engineers who thought DNSSEC was too much work for not enough benefit. You know what? I was wrong, and that's okay. Being wrong just means the world's more interesting than than you thought it was. DNSSEC turns out to be one of the most interesting technologies that I have ever seen in my career. Not simply for its ability to fix problems in DNS itself, although it does a pretty comprehensive job of that, but in actually providing a infrastructure, a operating environment in which some of the single most pernicious problems in all of security cannot merely be addressed, but addressed efficiently, effectively, affordably. These are words we don't generally consider in security. We usually just think, oh, well, we're just going to demand it, we'll mandate it, we'll require it. No, it doesn't work like that. It's got to be good. It's got to be operational. It's got to work in the field. And the really interesting thing, about 18 months ago, I sat down and said, okay, all my friends keep telling me I got to look at this DNSSEC stuff. I'm going to write a server. I didn't tell anyone. I just sat down and wrote one. About 18 months ago, I completely changed my tune on DNSSEC. Why? Because the server was really good. So all the things that I've been saying for the last 18 months about securing email, about securing the web, about making it possible to authenticate across organizational boundaries, you know what? I think all of y'all should be a little sick of it by now, because it's been a lot of talk and not a lot of code. And so I'm going to tell you all right now, in about 5 hours, we're going to be releasing a lot of code, and we're going to show you just how much value this technology is going to bring to securing the internet.
That sounds very tempting for us all to attend that session, that's for sure. Mark.
So that means everybody write it down. You need to come to Dan's presentation this afternoon. This is going to be another event just like 2008.
Not another like that.
Well, as Rod said, I am formerly the CISO from the state of California. So I am not an official representative from the state of California any longer, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit today. Unless you were in state government in October of 2007, the date probably doesn't mean a lot to you. But if you're in California state government, the date would mean a whole lot, because that was the day, that was the month that OMB took ca.gov offline. And I can tell you that gets your attention. Fortunately, I wasn't in California. I was the CISO in Colorado at the time, and I remember reading about it and thinking, holy cow, somebody is in big trouble. What happened was there was California has almost 2,000 .ca.gov domains, ca.gov and state.ca.us. And they're scattered, they're not only within state government, but a lot of local governments, fire departments, libraries, all over the place. And they're managed by the state, and at the time, perhaps not too well managed. And there was a domain in a county that had some malicious code on their website, and OMB had been trying for several months to get them to fix it, and they didn't fix it, so OMB just took ca.gov offline. So I remember reading about it when I took the job in California. I thought, you know what, I'm going to fix DNS. That's going to be one of the things I want to work on, one of my big projects. And I said, you know, DNSSEC is the way I want to do it. If we're going to fix DNS, let's really fix DNS. So I started rooting around trying to find some money, and I got a Homeland Security grant for it last year to implement DNSSEC in the state. And so the challenges, and I am not a DNSSEC expert, but I do understand what Dan just said, that DNSSEC will fix a lot of our problems. I want citizens in the state of California, when they go visit a DMV website or a Department of Healthcare Services website, that they're sure that they're visiting that website. DNSSEC will do that for us. So they're in the middle of, actually in the beginning phases of a deployment right now. And it's been a challenge. It is, one, I had to convince everybody up through the governor's office that this was the right thing to do. Because this is a huge cultural change, and it impacts a lot of people and a lot of organizations. So that's kind of where I'm focused on this, is the organizational change required to do something like a DNS implementation on a large government organization.
It's great. Well, I want to thank all the panelists, and now we'd like to open it up to questions from the audience for any of the panelists or any number of the panelists. And while you all think of those questions, I'll ask a question to the panel, and anyone can pick it up they'd like. And that is, so if each of you had a magic wand, and you could pick the next thing that needs to get done for DNSSEC to get deployed successfully in whatever is the environment you most care about or deal with, what do you want to get done? What do you want to see happen?
Well, I think the first step in getting DNSSEC out there is basically making it just dead simple for people who are today's DNS administrators to sign zones. The tools for that have been woefully inadequate. Just, 25-page documents about all the different steps that you have to go through to sign zones. Recently, the plug is, my plug is we produce something that makes it somewhat easier. And I think other people are doing the same kinds of things, but I think it's super important, and that's probably the first step to getting more people to sign their zone sooner.
Great. Any other panelists want to take a stab for that? While someone from the audience, we have a question from the audience. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, the rhetorical dumb question, and I know VeriSign's on the panel. Wouldn't it have just been easier just to mandate for high security, high important websites, just to everyone have EVSSL? A lot easier, a lot simpler, and that way you actually know, and you could verify, and you just click on that left little button in your browser and see who it is that you're talking to, and that's it. A lot easier than adding in this extra crypto and extra work at the multiple levels.
Ken, you want to take this?
Well, it is kind of interesting because you use the term, couldn't you just mandate that they use EVSSL? I don't know that any mandate has ever actually worked on the internet successfully easily. Certainly EVSSL is a rapidly expanding implementation of SSL, but even with the extended validation SSL certificates, there still was not a firm mechanism in place to prevent cache poisoning and those sorts of things. So even even if you could validate that the site and know that you were going to the site, not everyone was actually paying attention to all of those indicators. For instance, there's always been a padlock at the bottom of the browser, and even before some of the domain validated SSL certificates from some CAs were viewed as somewhat risky or riskier than EV SSL, people still didn't pay attention to the padlock at the bottom, and they still don't pay attention necessarily to the green bar. It's a good technology, but it takes a while to get 1.8 or so billion users kind of accustomed to that. The other thing is that they also relied on the user having to make a decision. What DNSSEC does is it takes that decision making sort of out of their hands, and it all happens in the background, and the infrastructure itself does that validation for them. And I think that's one of the key things that DNSSEC does differently than most of the traditional PKI systems, and that is it doesn't require the user to have to do a whole lot. It requires the real smart IT staff in the background to do a lot. And what we hope will happen is that the browsers and the other client applications which exist on the desktops will then begin to recognize those messages and present them to the user in a way that actually makes some sense to them and tells them when it doesn't validate why that happened.
Yeah, I have I guess this is a simple question. I remember when Dan came out with his disclosure about the weaknesses in the DNS, we were sitting around the office kind of trying to come up with solutions of how we could fix it. And one of the solutions was, why don't we just have the DNS server send 2 replies instead of 1? And then somebody came up with the realization that that's physically impossible because the DNS servers are now almost running at capacity. So when I heard about, okay, we're going to start implementing DNSSEC, I thought, wow, if we don't have the capacity to run, to do something that simple, how do we have the capacity to actually run DNSSEC?
All right, so what you refer to is actually, we called it multi-query. So it was actually really interesting because when we're sitting at this meeting at Microsoft, and there's like 16 of us, and we're going over all the possible solutions that aren't just doing what Dan Bernstein said to do in 1999. And the problem with multi-query, capacity is an issue. But the thing is, theoretically, you could just do multi-query in situations where there might be an attack. The real issue with multi-query is there's no guarantee from request to request that you'll get the same answer back. Like, if you look at Facebook, or you look at Hulu, or you look at a lot of very, very popular sites, you can't just say, well, we'll secure the entire internet but Hulu, because that doesn't fly. So multi-query was dropped not because of capacity, because we were able to scope when the capacity had happened. It was dropped for compatibility reasons.
Great. Another question over here.
What can I, as an IT professional, do and a DNS admin to get DNS out there for my domains, and how do I implement it, and where should I start looking for that sort of thing?
We're so glad you asked that question. Maybe Ken and Dan, can you help on this one? And timelines.
Yeah. So there are a lot of tools that are out there to help you do that. I would say initially don't try to overdo it. Okay, in other words, don't try to adopt a policy that the root and top level domains have with rapidly changing signing keys, because I think if you do that, you're opening yourself up to a huge management nightmare of trying to figure out when you need to roll them and all those sorts of things. The keys are pretty strong, and at your level, they're probably strong enough to last a very, very long time without having to change them. Dan might disagree, or he might agree, but there are a lot of tools out there. And I think that there are some better tools that are going to come along. So you have a couple of options. If you've got the time and you've got the resources to use the existing sort of command line tools that are available to you today, then by all means do it. If you don't, then I think that, and you still want to deploy DNSSEC and you're still set on it, then I think what you need to do is you need to start, sort of looking at what managed DNS offerings might be out there. Now, in terms of timelines, so as Rod said, there were, I think, 9 signed top-level domains. Tomorrow there'll be 10. Okay. Then in, pardon? .com will be signed in March. Okay. .NET in November, December timeframe, okay, and .edu the next few days. Okay, so that's sort of the timelines for those top level